Welcome to our podcast today. Ask Aaron and ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
This is Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source. EJ, what do we got for today?
Hey man, I tell you, this is coming up a lot, and this is pretty common now. Is reclassifying eighth graders. You
Hmm.
know, putting them back a year before they go into high school, thinking that that's going to help them develop, get ahead. Some people do it this way, Aaron. They think they do it because of the major league draft, and some people do it because their kids are underdeveloped. There's a lot of different ways people are trying to figure it out.
Right. Hmm. No, it's always kind of interesting to me because everyone's trying to kind of get that competitive edge. So I see both sides of it. I
Right,
see where, you definitely got a kid who's a late bloomer and he's behind, a year developmentally, and how, maybe giving him that extra year or her that extra year to physically mature
right.
might help them at least catch up to some of their peers. I was a late bloomer myself, so I can get why, people do that. But then the other part of me is on the grand scheme of things, do we really need to do this? How many kids are going to really play college ball or even, play professional? So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I guess it's a case by case basis. If your kid is really showing really a good aptitude for a sport and the only separator happens to be the physicality, yeah, maybe I can see that. But, other than that, if you're kind of just hedging your bets, I don't know if it does the athlete all that well. And then also you got to look at the athlete standpoint. What is that going to do to their psyche? Maybe it's so commonplace now that being held back's not a stigma like it was in our day.
Right, right.
Held back, it was kind of a stigma. Now maybe, not so much. And so maybe it doesn't bother kids. But, I'd say let the kid kind of drive that decision versus the parent and
Right.
and look at it from more of an overall development thing than we're trying to get this edge. Because I don't know. I see kids graduating at 19 years old. It's like, come on.
They could be 20 in college, right? I mean, when they enter their freshman year, right?
So I kind of, like I said, this whole competitive thing can get a little out of hand. I mean, and then you got on the back end, you've got kids going to, I forgot what they call them, not charter schools, but the kind of like the continuation,
Yeah, postgraduate high school for a
Yeah.
year, right? Yeah, that's what they call it, postgraduate. Not a leap year. What do they
Right.
call it?
I can't remember what they call it now,
Yeah,
but
they call it a word term, but yeah, it's like a postgraduate year, and you're gonna go there and develop. Like Aaron, I tell
and
you,
you're going
man.
to spend what, $15,000 to do it.
Yeah, for what? I mean, you go do it. I had a player go do that, and I thought it was at the end of the day, they want to do it. I was like, "Do you sure you want it? Why don't you just go to junior college
Yeah,
and
exactly.
go develop and
Right.
go get your grades right, get your
Right.
help, and go develop there because I think that's a better option for you. You're going to go to a postgraduate school, what, just to work on the sport? Because it has nothing to do with academics. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
It doesn't have anything to do with academics as far as I'm concerned, because my experience, now this is my experience, people, okay?
Right.
My experience is that these schools are just like, hey, it costs this much money. Come and train with our guys. I'm
Right.
like, what'd you do the past 4 years when you were with your club ball team or your
Right.
travel team and they had a program? So I don't quite understand that either, Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah. And then again, there's so many different pathways there. Why does it have to be that D1 scholarship right out of high school? Like you said, why not take that route where you go to a JC a year or two and use that as your development plan? Doesn't cost you near as
Not
much.
anything, man.
And you're probably playing a higher level of sport anyway, because I mean, I don't know about some of these, again, I'm calling them continuation schools, but I know they're not. But what do those schedules really look like? Are they really playing a level up, or are they just playing, regular high school ball? So why would you want another year of just regular high school ball.
Who are they playing? Is the question I have.
Yeah, that's what
Who
I'm
are they?
saying. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
So
yeah,
what's that, what are the real pluses other than giving your kid another year to grow and develop, which,
yeah,
can be enough of an excuse in itself, but I don't know if could be the whole deciding factor.
yeah.
Um,
Aaron, this reclassifying thing. Like, I'm against it. I'm just gonna flat out tell you.
yeah.
I just think that if you're a competitive athlete, and I get it if you're underdeveloped player, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, how many underdeveloped players really get to where they need to be?
Yeah.
I mean, I give you that. There are scenarios where they do,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like you can't say this is the recipe for every underdeveloped player.
No.
Okay, you're going to reclassify as an eighth grader, and we're going to move you on. That doesn't make any sense to me. Every case is different, you
Yeah.
know, and I think, like you said, it's a case by case situation. But just so you know, I'm against it because I think you're setting up your kid for failure. I
Mhm.
mean, what happens? Okay, so you go and get a job, and all of a sudden maybe you're not meeting the standards. So can I start over and reclassify and go to another smaller company and then come back to your company or start over? Uh, what are we doing? Are we setting our kids up for the truth, the failure? Or are we just kind of letting them grow and develop as on their own terms? I always say this, Aaron, don't want to be too religious about it, but Godspeed.
Yeah.
Everything happens in for a reason, okay?
Yeah.
And I really believe that, when you reclassify an athlete, you're doing it for reasons. I've heard this situation more, Aaron, on the fact that people are trying to get ready for the draft or I'm trying to be a sophomore on varsity, or I think I have a good chance to play here, and that's going to help my draft chances later. Like,
Right.
Lee, you're thinking about getting drafted. Do you understand how hard it is to play professional baseball, let alone get drafted in this day and age? There's only 20 rounds now. It's not 55 rounds like there were. There's not like 8 teams, minor league teams per organization
Yeah.
anymore. Like every organization has 5 teams,
Right.
and every organization gets 20 picks. And sometimes those picks they don't get 20 picks. Maybe they traded a star and they lost 2 or 3 compensation picks. So now they're picking 17 players, So that's kind of like, my take on that reclassifying thing is like, what are we really setting our kids up for? The truth or just kind of putting a band-aid on it or making them feel good, or are we doing the participation trophy thing again?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I just don't not sure if I'm on board with it. And again, I understand where it comes from. The parents are trying to give their kids the best possible chance to be
Right.
successful. But like you said, sometimes you just got to look at the reality of things. And what's so funny though is people do something like that, but they're not putting all the other things in place. They're not putting their kid on, a travel team that's developing them. They're not going to the right showcases. They're not training properly.
Right.
They're looking for all these other kind of, I don't know, quick fixes and kind of this whole shell game to try and slide a hand to try and give their athlete an edge. And and it just comes down to just do the work. God, I don't know why people avoid just doing the work.
I think that's something that you and I are really talking about this on a daily basis now as we see each other daily, is that the work is not being done anymore.
Yeah,
It's like, can I do it quicker and
yeah,
faster without really mastering what we're trying to get better at?
right.
And I think these days it's a shortcut society.
Yeah,
I hate to say that, but it is. We don't want to grind for a while and figure it out. Listen, I hate to throw his name back out there again, but this guy's having a really great year, Mike Aikawa at
yeah,
Lewis Clark. And you and I remember when he was 14 and he walked into the building.
yeah,
And when he came to our club and he started working out with you, and this kid was 5'2", 105 pounds, and he didn't really get better. Michael really didn't get better until like his sophomore junior year. So 4 years down the road, and then he kept on getting better every year,
Yeah.
junior, senior, and he kept on getting better. He's getting better right now in college. He just finished his first year. He's in his second year. He's leading his team in hitting. He's like hitting 449. It's crazy in 100 at bats. And I think about this and I go, that kid just really worked.
Yeah.
He just put his head down and worked. It wasn't like any magical thing. You told him, I told him, you're just gonna have to work really hard to get what you want. And
Yeah. We never had any conversations about how to finesse himself into college and this and that. And, should I do this? And, well, what about creatine? And, how do I do this? And what do you think about this? And should I go get my metrics done? And never had any of those conversations. Not one. It was,
you know,
pretty much what do I need to do? What do I need to do was all it was.
it's funny you said something earlier about showcases, and we didn't send Michael to a lot of showcases.
Yeah.
We sent him to places where he needed to be seen, but
Right.
we weren't like going, okay, your freshman year, you're going to showcase, sophomore year, you're going to showcase. It wasn't like this thing we had. So you have to go. Here are the things that we feel are best for you at this time. You're ready for them,
Right.
and are you ready to go? Yes. Okay. And he was ready to go and he excelled. That's what allowed him to get where he needed to be right now. And, I mean, the future for him is very, very positive. I
Yeah.
will say that very positive. And I hate to mention that, but there's a guy that could have been reclassified, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
He
he
could have
would
been.
he would be a candidate to say, hey, you know what? Let's give him another year. But, the worst case scenario, he's having a great collegiate career, gets his degree and goes on with life. Worst case scenario for him.
Right. What's wrong with You know what? He's having a great college experience.
Exactly.
It's enjoyable. And these are memories that are positive for him. And he can take that, along in his life and many great things will happen to him because of that. And hey, it's a Division 3 program. And look, Mike could have played Division 1 baseball. You and I know, and he would have went there and grinded and did some things and probably would have overcome. But Michael's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And his family, he says, I think I'm going to do this because I want that experience
Right.
to be Olympic. I want it to be great, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. For your parents thinking about this, think hard on it. And again, part of me all wants to talk about the whole psychological thing of it. Your kids may not always say it's not what they want to do, so you got to kind of also read between the lines because they're going to want to please you. And, especially if they've got friends and things like that in the same class, they may not want to be left behind. So kind of look at it from a global standpoint as to how it could affect your kid's life. And is it really worth it? Or is there another way to get there without having to do it?
I think that's well said, Aaron, today. Well said. I think the psychological impact is something that never gets overlooked. I'm glad you mentioned it today. It's a big deal. I think it's a major topic. So with that said, that kind of wraps things up today on Ask Aaron and Ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
It's Coach Aaron, the source. We'll see you.